I was very fortunate. When I was in the Army, I met a lot of wonderful people and had a lot of very interesting experiences. And one of the people that I had the pleasure to meet and to watch in action was a then Brigadier General, John Jumping Jack Singlaub, who was then Assistant Division Commander of the 8th Division. Assistant Division Commander Maneuver, based in Bad Kreuznach. It was an interesting time to be in Germany because most of the activity, as you all know, was going on in Vietnam, but the Russians had 6 months earlier, in August of '68, invaded Czechoslovakia. And what many people don't realize today is that the Russians put 500,000 troops across the Czech border in 8 hours. General Singlaub, how long did it take us to get 500,000 troops in Vietnam? It was about 10 years. But it was an interesting time, and there were a lot of interesting things happening. But one of the stories that was told about the general was, and I'm going to go a little bit out of sequence. I'm going to give you some history, but I'm going to start with this story, and that was right after we had dropped the A-bomb on Japan, not once, but twice. And the war, the emperor voted to end the war. His war cabinet was deadlocked. And even after the 2 atomic bombs, they weren't prepared to surrender. And the emperor finally said, we are going to surrender, and they surrendered on August 15th. 12 days later, August 27, 1945, General then Major Singlaub led a group of 4 intrepid fellows, Marine and a couple of other Army types. And unlike the plane that Katie and I flew in from Washington, he flew in an old C-47, which was also the old DC-3, but military conversion, C-47. My father was a navigator in that aircraft during the war. He loved that airplane, but it was a tough little flight. And they jumped onto Hainan Island in China. The mission was to rescue 400-odd Allied prisoners of war, primarily Australians. There were some Dutch, there were some English, and we're not certain as to whether the Japanese garrison, which numbered about 1,500, were aware that the war had ended. And even if they were aware of the war ending, would they not try to stop Major Singlaub and his crew? He went in and bluffed his way through. He went in with almost no weapons and was able to talk through an interpreter the commanding officer into giving up those Allied prisoners, and it was a tremendous feat. Let's go back a little bit now. That was 45. General Singlaub was a graduate of UCLA, class of 43. He was an ROTC, second lieutenant, 515 parachute infantry, then volunteered for the OSS and was in William Colby's class. And from there, he jumped into France in, again, August of '44, right after D-Day, and he worked with the resistance to try to just put the Germans, actually make it difficult for the Germans to continue their operations and to spread a lot of mischief, which he and the resistance people were successful in doing. And one little side point, my wife and I just got back from France, and everywhere we went, they were talking about the resistance and how important a role they played. It was interesting. But in any event, I have here a picture. There's an article which I will be happy to make copies of, or I should say my secretary will, and I will be happy to share these with anybody, but there are a couple of things in here. And one of them, and I don't know that you can see it, but it's as good as Steve McQueen. This is General Singlaub, then Lieutenant, practicing his motorcycle riding before he went into France. It's really quite a picture, and your kids must love having that. He really was a true warrior. And I used to think that I was a violent anti-communist. I think Jack Singlaub is more anti-violent than I ever was. But the highlights: OSS, jumped into France. I told you about the experience jumping into China, that island in China. After World War II, he worked in Manchuria with the CIA to try to disrupt Mao Zedong. In 1950, found himself in Korea as a battalion commander, where he received the Silver Star for his actions. From Korea, other assignments, eventually to an outfit called SOG, S-O-G. And it's not what it seems to be. The name SOG is an acronym. And this is a book which I recommend. I'm up here with prompts. But this book was written by a retired Army major by the name of John Plaster, who served 3 tours in SOG in Vietnam. And the accomplishments of this particular unit was just extraordinary. They probably had, man for man, more Medal of Honor winners than any other unit in the history of the U.S. Army. And there were probably a couple of people, one of them by the name of Bob Howard, who finally did get the Medal of Honor, but probably should have had it about 4 or 5 times. If you read his exploits, which are recounted here in this book, it sounds like Rambo, only this guy was for real. It wasn't Hollywood, and the things he did were extraordinary. But General Singlaub was the commander from 1966 to 1968 of this outfit, followed shortly thereafter by one of his friends, classmates from UCLA, and a former 8th Division Chief of Staff, John Cavanaugh, and then by Skip Sadler, who was the Chief of Staff of the 8th Division when I first came to the 8th Division. So there are a lot of people involved in SOG that I knew, but I didn't know were involved in SOG. It really is, it's a very interesting book. The records of the achievements of these people were kept secret for so many years, and there's still many people who are unaware of the role that they played in really disrupting the North Vietnamese and really causing a lot of havoc. Small groups went into Laos, went into Cambodia, North Vietnam, trying to rescue prisoners of war, rescue downed pilots. It's an extraordinary story. The high point of his military career, in some ways, some people might think is the low point. In 1977, he was Chief of Staff of the of our forces in Korea, and he took exception to President Carter's decision to reduce force in Korea. And he made it known that he disagreed with that, and Carter fired him. I think that I would consider that a positive. And you know, Jimmy keeps shooting his mouth off today. I don't understand why someone doesn't put a plug in his mouth. But in any event, so that was a high point in his career. He retired at that point, but he didn't retire. And in the 80s, he was very helpful, President Reagan, in combating the Contras in Nicaragua. Again, the anti-communist in him. I want to read sort of his creed that I have found in here. If you'll pardon me, I can't see this very well. Go to the sound of the cannons. Solve the problem on the battlefield. Don't worry about your career. It will take care of itself if you survive. A random round would come in and kill somebody here within sight, and you wonder, how come? Why am I saved? The answer was, you have an important job in the future. Major General John K. Singlaub. and he's still here. So I assume he still has some important work to do. And for all the work that you've done, General, we congratulate you, we applaud you, and we appreciate everything you've done. We're glad you're here tonight. And Joan, congratulations to you. It's very nice to meet you. We hope you enjoy the evening and the award. So, Frank, we have the award.